kind of lay out what we're planning to do for this training today is I want to start us off with just a general overview of Season of Sharing, just so that we're all on the same page as to who the different players are, how the system works together, what the general guidelines are. That should only take the first 5-10 minutes of this call. And then what we're going to do is hop on over and we're going to talk about the new platform that we've developed for Season of Sharing. Now, that's been a long time in coming. I know most of you on this call have been completing these applications on paper for years, if not months. I know that there have been multiple kind of individualized digital systems for submitting these applications, and that's wonderful. We knew it needed to go digital. So I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this transition. And we will go ahead and get started. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and we will start working on this together. So first off, you're seeing a login page right now, but what I wanted us to start with was looking at the Season of Sharing guidelines to really just set the scene for what Season of Sharing is and what it is intended to do. So just to look at our updated guidelines, the main goal of Season of Sharing is to provide emergency financial assistance to families that live in the 4-county area that the Community Foundation serves, which is Sarasota, Manatee, Charlotte, and DeSoto counties. The most common use of these funds is for rental assistance or mortgage payments, but they've also are very frequently used for utility payments, including new deposits or late deposits for gas, electric, and water. Season of Sharing can also be used to cover childcare expenses or other expenses that are directly related to someone either obtaining or keeping their employment. So things like a car repair so that they can drive to and from work. That's kind of covered in that expenses with maintaining employment. Now, any agency in that 4-county area who serves clients and has case managers who can help kind of do the application on behalf of their clients is welcome to complete an application. Whether or not you've done it before, whether or not you are a fiscal agency, you are welcome to complete that application for your clients. There's been a little bit of confusion over time as to the difference between kind of the agencies who are applying on behalf of clients versus being a fiscal agency. So we're going to clear that up here in a minute too and just kind of talk about the different roles. But just know that if you are serving clients and they need help with rental assistance or utility payments, we want you to consider Season of Sharing as an option to support those clients. Basically, what that would mean is that you will just double check to make sure that that client is eligible for the funding, that they haven't already reached their annual funding limit through Season of Sharing. And if that's the case and Season of Sharing is the best financial support for that client, you can then complete a funding request for that client. You'll submit it to a fiscal agency. They'll double check to make sure that the client hasn't hit their limit yet, that the purpose of the funds makes sense, that they have all the backup documentation that they need. And then they would go ahead and process a check for the payment that is needed. That check doesn't go to the client themselves. It wouldn't go to Mr. Brown so Mr. Brown could pay his rent. The check would go to his landlord. So as we think about that, we think about the fact that these payments aren't going to direct personal assistance. They're going to meet an unmet cost. So the check would be written to a landlord or to a utility company or to a car repair shop. The typical maximum for the year for each household is about $2,000 but within a 365-day period. So typically, each household can qualify for $2,000. That means that if your client has, let's say, a spouse that they're sharing their house with, that $2,000 applies for that entire household, not for each member of the household. So each person isn't individually eligible for $2,000. It's the household level of support, especially because that is mostly going towards rent. We know that those people are sharing rent. We don't want to cover 2 months of rent back to back for each person who's living in that house. So we are going to be tracking that spending rate by household, and we do currently by keeping a list of every adult that's in that household who's been assisted by the funding. There are some times where that number can go up, especially in the current housing market. We do have a caveat that if going up even to $3,500 can help your client who is a renter, so first off, they'd have to be a renter, but if it can help them either obtain or maintain their housing situation and be able to afford it, there are some caveats in place so that we can go up to a higher limit to help them in this rental market, because we know this rental market has obviously been very dramatically impacted over the last year. So there's more details here. I'm happy to talk through any of that, as we move forward. This hasn't really changed. I think we updated the guidelines, just kind of their formatting a year ago, but generally this is about the same program that we've been seeing for the last 20 years in our community with, an increase in maximum amount of assistance. So those are the general guidelines. So how does the network work? I know that there's sometimes been questions around this. So I made this beautiful little picture. I use it a lot to just kind of show people how I think about the Season of Sharing network, because I think it is confusing. There are a lot of steps to it, and there are a lot of different players who are involved. So when we think about Season of Sharing, I really like to think that it begins and ends with our own community. The community as a whole donates to a Season of Sharing fund here at the Community Foundation. We run an annual fundraising campaign between November and February of each year, well, through January 31st, but through the end of January. And essentially donors will then donate to the Season of Sharing fund that's housed here at the Community Foundation. So funding comes in from our community. Most years we have over 3,500 unique donors who are helping to contribute to that, as well as foundation partners. So the Patterson Foundation offers a generous match. For every $500,000 the community raises, they put in $100,000 to the fund. So we have foundation partners, we have donor partners, and essentially all of those funds are then pooled into a Season of Sharing fund here at the foundation. So that's the role we play. We house that money. So we help bring it in, and then our job is also to get it back out to you all. We want that money to be benefiting our community. The way that we do that is kind of a different approach. I know sometimes people think that we grant that money directly to people. We actually can't do that. Legally, as a foundation, we can only write grants to charitable organizations. So we can't grant directly to people. So because of that, we set up this system of Season of Sharing to use agencies that we call fiscal agencies. What that means is that we are writing a large check to those agencies. And those agencies are then responsible for writing the small checks to landlords, to the electric company, to the car repair shop, because we can't do that. So we have found agencies in our area whose charitable purposes align with what Season of Sharing is meant to do. And they have agreed that they will take in those dollars and make sure that every single one of those dollars goes back out to a provider. So going to a landlord, going to an electric company, in order to help people in our area stay in their homes. So we've seen that the community puts money into the Community Foundation, to a fund here at the Community Foundation. We grant money out of that fund to fiscal agencies who are then responsible for making sure it makes it to providers. Now, when people need help in our community, once again, that starts at a community level. There are thousands of people in our community who have needs over the course of the year. They might need to access those dollars. So what they can do is work with a case manager. All of you are very intimately aware of this, I believe, at this stage, and what these meetings look like and these needs of our community in general. But essentially, members of our community, in order to apply for Season of Sharing, would meet with a case manager who can complete an application on behalf of their clients. That case manager can decide if Season of Sharing is the right fit for that client, if that client qualifies, and help compile the backup documentation that we need to make sure that that funding is going to where we need it to go. If we're going to be providing rental assistance, we want to know that there is an actual lease that's in place, so that this is a legal and binding contract. That we want to make sure that these things are in place. And so we use case managers to help us compile the information we need to be good stewards of those dollars. So essentially, a client can come in, they'll meet with a case manager. That case manager looks at any resources in the community. Should Season of Sharing be the right fit? The case manager helps them complete an application and then sends it to a fiscal agency. That fiscal agency is going to double check to make sure that that client is eligible for Season of Sharing funding, that they haven't hit their limit, that everything, it looks well and good. We have all the backup documentation that we need. Should that be the case, the fiscal agency will approve that application and print a check to the provider associated with it. So that's the way the network basically works. It's kind of a complicated piece that begins with our community fundraising and ends with dollars making it out the door to support members of our community who are in need. And you all play such an important role in that. So I want to say, first off, just thank you so much for, being a part of this, for helping to get these dollars out the door and helping to keep members of our community in their home. So with that, we're going to move over to our digital platform. And I know that some people have asked the question, why, after all these years, are we making a move to a digital platform for Season of Sharing and kind of changing the process? The reason for that is kind of multi-pronged. I think we knew that digital is the way the world is going. I think COVID really taught us that, and taught us that in an incredibly accelerated pace, that, we needed ways to reach people when they couldn't have a face-to-face meeting. And so we saw in that stage, a lot of our agencies or fiscal agencies figured out ways to make Season of Sharing digital, but it was also really aligning with what we saw ourselves. We had put together a work group back in 2020 to really take a look at Season of Sharing and really tell us where it could be improved, what could help improve it, what could make the workflow better, what could make it easier to understand. And we had two really main takeaways from that are impacting this transition today. The first was just that we should try to simplify the network wherever we could, make it easier to understand, make it easier to become a part of it, make it easier to access the information. And then the other piece was that we should create a digital application and database. And that was from feedback from your agencies, probably a couple of years ago now. But we had interviews, we sat down, we talked about what could make it more usable, what could make it easier for you. And what we heard was going digital would help make that happen. So we are so excited for you to be here today to introduce you to the system that we've set up and walk you through how to navigate this process moving forward. Now, as we go into the new digital system, I just want to be really straightforward that we're still in the end stage of our development. This is a system we built from scratch, from the ground up. And so as we look through here, we are still actively working back and forth with a developer who's helping us, finalize language, finalize where words are showing up, finalize where buttons are showing up. I would say that this is a semi-complete version. It will be complete by the time that we go live in February. So if you see something that looks a little bit out of place, just know that right now we are working very actively with the developer. That will continue through the first few weeks of using the system as well. So as we learn that, things pop up that don't look right, we'll be able to correct them. But I want you to just know, bear with us, ask questions, send us your feedback. This is a time where we really want to make sure that this is working for you all. So don't be surprised if you see something that looks a little off right now. But then also, as we start using this system, please send feedback, send your thoughts. We're very receptive to them, and we want to make sure that we are working to the best of our ability with our developer to get this where it needs to be for the future moving forward. So with that, I'm going to pause for just a moment. Does anybody have any questions before we jump into this new process? All right. So then I'm going to go ahead.
No, I would like to ask, which are the four fiscal agencies?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, we'll definitely talk through that as part of the process. But what we did was we streamlined the fiscal agencies a bit, because with this new digital system, we were able to kind of flow information to them in a new way. So what we have right now is essentially one per county, except for Manatee County, which has two. So in Sarasota County, it's Glasser-Schoenbaum Human Services Center. Probably very many of you have worked with Christina Rusi over there. She's our head point of contact. In Manatee County, we have two. We have both Turning Points and Step Up Suncoast. Those have traditionally been the fiscal agents for Manatee County, and they're both staying. Also, Step Up Suncoast has become the fiscal agent for DeSoto County. So now they are doing that role for two different counties rather than just one. So if you are applying on behalf of a client in DeSoto County, those applications will go to Step Up Suncoast. And then for Charlotte County, there's also been no change. We're still working with the United Way of Charlotte County.
Angelica, there was one question in the chat. For those of us using online now, will this be a new platform?
Yes, this will be a new platform. So if you are working through, for example, in Charlotte County, they have their own platform right now that they built out. This is going to be a collaborative platform that will collect all season of sharing applications from all counties, and we'll all be migrating onto this platform. All right, anything else before we launch into it? All right. So the way that I structured this training today is really starting us just from the ground up. We're going to play this scenario like you have a client who's coming in to meet you and you're sitting in your office. Where do you start? How do we move forward kind of through this process? So first things first, this system lives online. So what you will have is a link to log into the system, and you can access that through any web browser. You don't need to do kind of a remote server login or anything like this. This is a system that lives online. You'll be able to bookmark it and visit this website when you need to apply on behalf of a client for Season of Sharing dollars. I will send all of this out afterwards. Don't worry, you don't need to write down the link. I'm going to send each agency basically a summary next week. So no, it won't be with you tomorrow. No, it will be with you next week. You'll have all of this information. The other thing that I'm doing is, as people are registering for this training, I am creating your individual agency and your individual login information. So I will have that for everybody by next week. Right now we have about 350 people registered. I'm on account number, I think 220. So I'm keeping up, but I'm a little bit behind. I would say you could access it today, but I'm not quite ready yet. But essentially, I will reach out to you next week. I will send you your login information. I will send you the other information for everybody from your agency who's registered, and there'll be kind of a recap email going out along with the recording of a training next week. So we get to enter our system online. I'll send this link out. You can bookmark it in your computer, any browser that you prefer to use, absolutely fine. So you'll come to this page. You'll enter your email address and your password. Now, for some people who registered for today's call, I noticed some people registered under personal email addresses rather than one that's affiliated with your agency. Once again, I'm going to send that information to you next week. If that's not the email that you want, feel free to let me know and I can change it really easily. And there will also be somebody at your agency who can change it for you. Same thing with the password. I have set all the passwords. I'll send them out to you in an email next week. Essentially, from here, you'll just log in with your credentials. So log in with your email, whatever email you choose to use, log in with the password that I'll send you. If you'd like to change it, you're more than welcome to change that password. I'm setting them to be pretty standard so that, I can easily make sure that they're working. And we will go ahead and log in. What is happening here? Of course, it's going to have a bit of a problem the very first time we're trying to log in and show it to everybody. Let's see. Why isn't it letting me log in? Okay, it's going slowly but surely here at the top. All right, so we are in the new system here. On your home screen, you can see there's a couple options here. You have the option to send a message. So if you have a question for me, for a fiscal agent, for anybody that you're working with, you can send messages through here. It's a feature that we're curious about, how much we can use it primarily for a back and forth between you and a fiscal agent. If you have a very pointed question, you can send them a question directly through this platform. They can look at your client information. They can see what kind of details you've put in, and they can help answer that question within the system. Email also works. We're just trying to kind of keep them divided where we can. We're not sure how it's going to work yet, but know that it's an option. You can also use this to send me an option or to send me a message directly. What I'm hoping you'll use this for is, especially in those first few weeks of migrating to the system, you come in, something looks weird, something's not working the way you want it to, you can just send me a message directly in here. I can see that there's a question in the chat that says, if we have some people who are multiple people from the same agency, will we each have our own login or will we all share one? You will each have your own. So I am creating these accounts for everybody. If you choose that, 2 people who work with you are going to be the primary people working in this system, that's great. You'll also have the ability to set up and add or remove your own users as you need to. So depending on what workflow works best for you, I'm happy to talk through that. But right now I'm setting up every user with their own login. So we have a messaging feature. You're welcome to message me, questions, comments. You're also welcome to message back and forth with your fiscal agencies if you have questions about kind of the documentation that you need or any pieces there. You also have an option to immediately launch into a funding request. We're going to come back to that. That's what we're calling the application these days. It's not, one thing straightforward anymore. We're going to have kind of a client record and a funding request. This would take you directly into that. We're going to pause on that for a minute because we're going to go into all the details here. Other things that we have on your home screen are an announcement section. So this is where I can write an announcement that can blast to all of you. So let's say we had a question, we need to change it, and I want to give you a heads up that when you go into the application, you're going to see a new question. I can put announcements right here. So just know there's an area for announcements. You'll also have a place for saved funding requests. If you've started an application for a client, but then they didn't bring you a copy of their lease, or you still need that electric bill from them, you're welcome to go ahead and get that funding request started. And it will save right here on your homepage. You also have a messages box. So if you want to message me or a fiscal agent, you can send and receive messages from here. There are reminders. This is something you are able to set for yourself. So this is something I do not see for you, but if you want to just prompt yourself that Mr. Brown owes you a lease and you want that to be saved here in your reminders, you're welcome to use it. I'm not sure how many people will or won't use it. It's something that I'm really eager to see how it plays out, but we left it here just in case there's something here that's helpful for you for the reminder system. Then we also have upcoming activity sections. So I put these towards the bottom because I know they aren't as pressing for you as they are kind of for me. But as activities come up, or as calls come up, or as meetings come up for people who are part of the Season of Sharing Network, I'll be putting them here. You can tell me that you'd like to come right through RSVPing to any upcoming activities. And then anything that you have RSVP'd for is saved in the upcoming activities that I've RSVP'd for. If you open these, you can see they pop up and they give you a little bit more details. I did put the Zoom link for today's call in here too. So, just in case you lose it, in case you're getting 500 emails a day and this is an easier platform for you, great. I will always try to double confirm where I can, but just know any calls that are happening, I will be putting in here so that you can easily see them RSVP and get the basic information all on your own. That will become particularly relevant in the next 8 weeks as we move into this platform, because we will be hosting weekly check-in calls. You are not required to come to them. It is more of a weekly, if you have questions and you'd like a chance to ask those in person, I'll be available, our fiscal agencies will be available, and we are here to talk with you about any issues that you're having with moving on to the new system. So I'm planning on booking those weekly after the launch. So the launch will be February 1st. We're going to have weekly calls for at least the first 6 to 8 weeks to make sure that we can work through all of those issues together, that we can be available to help, answer, navigate, talk through these things together. So all of those will be listed in here in the activities section. So if you're having questions, you want to know when we're having one of those calls, those will all be right here. I will also send them via email in my big email to you next week. So you'll have them in multiple ways, but just know you can also go on, RSVP, copy the link, put it on your calendar right from here. So with this initial overview of the homepage, let's say you have a client come into your office and you're trying to figure out if Season of Sharing is the right fit. Traditionally, one of the first steps that you've taken is you've reached out to a fiscal agent directly and said, hey, has this client accessed their limit of Season of Sharing dollars, or how much money is available to them right now? In the new platform, we are building a system where you will have access to that information yourself, which will be, I think, take a little bit of that onus off of the fiscal agent for that instant back and forth. But also, as part of that, we don't have back information in the system because each agency completes their applications on paper right now. We have some of the basic information for all the clients for the past years, not enough information to totally import them and create client records in this new system. So what we've done is a kind of a stopgap for this first year is we have saved a document that shows you who has access Season of Sharing dollars and in what amounts and on what dates. You can find that here. So you'll come up to this additional functions area, and there's a folder in here called internal documents. And this will be where you'll pretty much start your journey most times. You can come into here and you can see there are different documents saved here. These are all things that I want you to have access to. You don't need to check them every single time. Some of them are helpful tools. But the first one that we'll take a look at is this client usage check. And you can see it's from 2/1/20 well, that's the wrong date because it should be 2023 to 2020. No, this is right. 2022 to 2023. Years throw me off. This is a full past year of records of clients who have accessed Season of Sharing dollars. We're going to go ahead and download that. All right, and I'm going to bring it over to the correct screen. Ooh. All right. So here we have compiled all of the information for the clients who have accessed Season of Sharing over the last year, starting from the day that we'll plan to launch the platform, which would be February 1st. The information that is in here, we've taken out some of the identifying information. So currently we have been previously using the last 4 of the social. We didn't want that to be public. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are going to have access to the system. So we've taken that out. So there are no socials in this. It's just names, dates, amounts, and then the referring agencies and fiscal agencies who served those clients. So this is a good place to start for double checking as to if people have dollars left or not. We know that roughly the limit will be $2,000 per household. So you can come in here, you can search by name. For those of you who aren't super familiar with Excel, it has this wonderful option at the top called the find. You can come in here, you can tell it to find, and then you can type in first name, last name, or even agency, and be able to search for that text within this whole document. So probably last name is a great place to start, typing in their last name, seeing who has been served, and then you can double check the amounts and make sure that it's still below that $2,000 limit. Now, I know that this is a bulky place to start, but it does give you direct access to that information yourself. The other thing that this document has is it also has a contact person, a contact email, and a contact phone number that you can reach out if you have a question. So if you're, working in Charlotte County and you have a question about this client, you also have a point of contact that you can reach out to say, hey, I have a question about this client. I can't really tell if they have any dollars left or, any specific questions that you have. You're welcome to reach out to that contact there with questions. It will involve a little bit of math. It can. So you can sort this chart however you'd like to. You can sort it by last name. You could sort it by date. You can just use the find feature to find any examples of that person's last name. Know that you'll be doing the first check. Also know that our fiscal agencies will be running a second check as they approve your application. So they're giving you the access to this information so that you have it front and center, but also know there will be a second set of eyes helping to add up the math, helping to make sure that those clients haven't reached their limit for the year as part of.
Could you point out where the find
Yes, absolutely. So I'm just going to scroll us up to the very top of this document. And so here in the Excel on the home tab, if you come all the way over, almost all the way to the right, there's this little magnifying glass that says find and select. And if you click there,
I'm sorry.
Glass for find.
Where I didn't see it. I didn't.
All right. So we're on the home tab here. Can you see my mouse?
Uh-huh.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to go all the way across, almost all the way to the right.
I see.
And then there's this magnifying glass. I think you can also press, I think it might be Control F, and that brings up find, but there's a couple different ways to get there.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
There is another question in the chat. Someone said currently our policy is 1 application per year. Is this now multiple applications if under the 2,000 limit? I think that means per individual.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it can be. So across the board, yes, if they need to apply, as long as they are underneath that $2,000 limit, they're welcome to submit multiple applications. And I'm happy to talk through that too on a case-by-case basis. If, sometimes I know it can be tricky because we as Season of Sharing funders, we are funders, and then you all are agencies, and your agencies have their own guidelines in addition to what Season of Sharing can do. But just know that you are welcome to have your own agency guidelines as far as Season of Sharing is concerned. We are fine with processing multiple applications as long as we don't go above that $2,000 limit. Yes, and I do know that there are a lot of St. Vincent de Paul conferences. I set those up, each conference I set up as kind of its own agency. And then I've been adding users into each conference for St. Vincent de Paul. So when I send out those emails next week, what I will do is send one to your conference with every user that I have registered under your conference. And I'm going to be sending those out that way for every agency. If you're working at First Step, I'm going to say, hey, First Step, here's all the people I have signed up. Here's all the information I have for you. If anything here doesn't look right, let me know, because I can still make those edits. So I'll send that out to you next week. So it'll say, hey, you're St. Vincent de Paul, it's this conference. Here's who I have registered to you currently. Here's the login information for all of them. If this looks wrong or you'd like me to change anything, let me know. All right. If you're thinking about as far as on this duplication prevention spreadsheet here, if you want to know which conference is referring, that kind of depends on the records that we have from the past. I think it'll give you a start. You can see here, there's maybe one St. Vincent de Paul. We can tell it was processed at Glasser Schoenbaum. If you wanted more details, you could reach out to Chris Rusi and she can backtrack and kind of see more details on that for you. So if you wanted to specifically know if this was your conference, that would be a great question to direct to the question point of contact here. But so essentially this spreadsheet is where you'll start. You can double check, you can look for your client's name, you can see if they've accessed Season of Sharing before. The other thing with this document is that for the first year of using the new platform, I'm going to be updating it pretty frequently because I want you to know whether or not they've accessed dollars until we can fully trust the new platform 1 year in with 1 full year of information. I'm going to keep moving information into this spreadsheet so that you have access to it without needing to check 2 different places right off the bat. So, every few days, I'm going to pull a report of who has currently been served through Season of Sharing dollars. I will add them to this spreadsheet so that when you're looking here, for this first year that we're moving on to the new platform, the information is as current as I can keep it. So let's say we've gone ahead and we've looked. We don't see them in here, or they haven't hit their limit, and we are ready to start, moving the client into the new system and going through the new application process with them. There are a couple of resources here that you can use to start that process. So I know that not everybody, when you meet with clients, sits at a computer and wants to type all of this directly into a system right off the bat. Sometimes people like to write it on paper. They want to make sure they have all of the information and then come back and put it into the system after. That's totally okay. What we've done here is I've basically built checklists and I've titled them all checklist. You can see document is called checklist over here. What those are is each question that this new system will be asking you for information on. So if we download any of those, if we look at like a client intake checklist, this is also just for Season of Sharing, but this is what you need to create the client's profile in our new system. So it's opening, give me 1 second. There we go. So essentially this is just a basic box that collects basic client information. And these are all the fields when you create a client profile in the new system that you'll need. Most of them are not required. I know sometimes people don't want to share all of their information. We'll talk about what is or what isn't. But if you're sitting face-to-face with a client and you would prefer to write these things on paper and then put them in the system, know that those tools are there in the form of checklists. We have them both for the client intake and then for each type of funding request. So if you knew that you were going to be putting a new client in the system, you have the ability to fill out the client information here. And then that client, let's say they would like to apply for rent, you can download a rent checklist. And as it loads, here we go. There's something that looks like this that will walk you through each of the questions that you will be putting into the system as you complete an application. Once again, you don't need to use this. You could do this live in the system. But if you want these as a resource and you prefer to do it on paper first and put it into the system second, that's also okay. And this will give you the questions and the order that you'll be answering the questions in the system. So as you go through, each of these things will be what's needed. You can see here what you'll need to do. You'll need to make sure that they haven't reached their limit in the last few days. You'll need these specific documents. You will need this optional document if you have it. And then here's something the fiscal agent is going to double check at the other side.